trapped in the snowstorm for weeks. This albino hatchling dragged the beginning, the storm and the hatchling. The storm had not ended for 19 days. On the frozen surface of Eleuthera, 7, the winds howled like starving predators. Snow tore across the plains with the fury of shattered glass, burying mountains in white dunes that shifted and collapsed like restless oceans. Survival was not granted by strength or weapons here. It was granted by endurance and luck. And the albino hatchling had neither. Small by her kind's measure, with wings too weak to lift her body and claws dulled by the constant scraping of ice, the creature should not have lived beyond the first week. She had been separated from her mother during the first collapse of the storm front, when visibility fell to less than a meter and the herd scattered in panic. Most of the elders would not search for stragglers, dragons on Eleuthera. 7 believed in strength, in survival of the most capable. Weak hatchlings vanished, and the tribe simply marched on. But this one, snow-white scales marked by faint blue veins of bioluminescence, refused to die. She dragged herself through the storm, her body low to the ground, wings tucked tightly to conserve heat. Hunger gnawed at her belly. Frost clung to her ridged spine. The blizzards howled so loudly she could not even call for help, without her cries being consumed by the wind. And yet, she carried something. Clutched in her teeth, wrapped awkwardly in the remnants of her mother's shredded cloak of membrane, was a fragment of shattered incubation crystal, the last piece of her sibling's egg. It pulsed faintly, carrying within it a fragile spark of life. Her sister had not hatched in time before the storm broke, but the crystal held her dormant essence. If she reached the sheltering caves of the valley, perhaps an elder could reignite it. The hatchling knew nothing of odds or impossibility. She only knew she could not abandon the fragment. So she dragged it, day after day, through howling gales and avalanches, leaving a shallow trench in the snow behind her. Middle, the human in the ice wastes. Miles away, another figure struggled against the storm. Kieran Holt, a human mechanic turned reluctant explorer, had crash-landed weeks ago when his shuttle was torn apart by the storm's magnetic surges. His distress beacon sputtered uselessly in the atmosphere, swallowed by the constant static. His supplies dwindled with each passing day. But Kieran was stubborn. He had grown up on Titan, where storms raged for months, where visibility was often nothing but a few meters of methane fog. He had learned to endure, to move carefully, to never waste energy. His survival wasn't heroism. It was a careful arithmetic of exhaustion and grit. Wrapped in layers of heated polymer, visor half-ice, Kieran trudged across Eleuthera's wastelands, searching for the signal spike he had detected on his scanner. He thought it might be wreckage from his ship, spare parts, maybe power cells. What he found instead was a trail in the snow, a shallow, meandering groove lined with small crimson droplets. Blood. Kieran followed, his boots crunching over frozen layers, until he saw it. A pale creature, half buried in snow, barely the size of a large dog. Its wings twitched weakly. Its chest rose and fell in ragged gasps, and clenched in its tiny jaws was something glowing faintly blue. At first, Kieran froze. His training screamed danger. Dragons on Eleuthera were apex predators, feared across half the galaxy. Even hatchlings could lash out with venom or claws. But as he studied the trembling body, something in him cracked. This wasn't a predator. This was a child, dying alone in the snow. He approached slowly, kneeling in the snow. "Hey!" he murmured through his visor. "Easy, little one. I'm not here to hurt you." The hatchling hissed weakly, but it was less a threat and more a plea to stay away from her burden. She pressed her jaw tighter around a glowing crystal, unwilling to release it. Kieran extended his gloved hands. He didn't touch her, not yet. Instead, he removed the emergency heater from his pack, pressing it into the snow near her. Warmth radiated out, melting the frost around her limp form. The hatchling blinked, her luminous eyes reflecting suspicion and exhaustion. Minutes passed before her trembling lessened. Slowly, Kieran scooped both her and the crystal into his arms. "All right," he whispered, voice cracking with something he hadn't felt in weeks. "Hope. We'll figure this out together." Weeks in the storm, man and hatchling. The storm did not end. For another 2 weeks, Kieran and the hatchling moved through Eleuthera's frozen hellscape. The human built makeshift shelters out of collapsed ice caves, lit fires from chemical sticks, and rationed his dwindling supplies. He fed the hatchling tiny strips of synthetic protein, thawed in his breath, while she stubbornly held on to the crystal fragment as if her soul depended on it. At first, Kieran thought she might simply die in his arms one night, and he braced himself for the heartbreak. But the hatchling was resilient in ways that surprised him. She grew stronger each day, her movements more deliberate, her luminous veins brighter. She even began following him without being carried, though she always limped, always dragged herself low, conserving strength. One night, as the storm howled above their cave, Kieran spoke aloud, mostly to himself. You know, I should have died here. Ship's gone. Signal's gone. Supplies almost out. But here you are. The hatchling blinked at him, crystal clutched close. You're dragging me forward, aren't you? He chuckled bitterly. I thought I was saving you. Maybe it's the other way around. The hatchling pressed against his side, sharing body heat. For the first time in weeks, Kieran allowed himself to sleep without fear. Discovery, the ruins in the snow. On the 29th day since the storm began, the winds shifted. For the first time, Kieran saw beyond the endless white, and what he saw made his breath catch. A valley stretched ahead, half buried under centuries of snow. Rising from it were the skeletal remains of a great alien structure, pillars of stone and crystal, glowing faintly beneath the frost. The hatchling stirred, her veins pulsing brighter. She knew this place. This was where her people once awakened their young, where incubation crystals were reignited by the resonant energy of the valley. Kieran stumbled toward the ruins, hatchling bounding weakly beside him. At the heart of the valley stood a chamber carved into the ice, lined with glowing conduits that pulsed like veins. In its center was a pedestal, shaped for something round. Something like the crystal. The hatchling dragged herself forward, teeth clenched around the fragment. She placed it on the pedestal, nudging it with her snout. The faint blue light flickered, then pulsed stronger. Kieran held his breath. The fragment began to hum, resonating with the chamber. Slowly, impossibly, a tiny silhouette formed within the crystal. Her sibling, curled in stasis. The chamber was working, but the power was failing. The conduits flickered, their ancient energy reserves almost spent. The crystal pulsed weakly, unable to complete the resurrection. No, Kieran whispered. He dropped to his knees, tearing open his pack. His power cell, the last one keeping his suit warm, glowed faintly. If he gave it up, he would freeze within hours. The hatchling looked at him, luminous eyes unblinking. She nudged the crystal again, then looked back at him. Pleading, Kieran exhaled. Yeah, I figured. He tore the cell free and slammed it into the conduit. The room flared with light. Energy cascaded through the chamber, bathing the crystal in brilliance. The fragment pulsed brighter, brighter, until it cracked open. For within spilled life, a smaller hatchling, identical in its albino glow, slid onto the pedestal, shivering and mewing weakly. The older hatchling pressed against her sibling, wrapping wings protectively. Kieran collapsed against the wall, body shaking from the sudden bite of cold. His heater cell was gone. His suit would not last long now. But as he watched the two hatchlings nuzzle each other, chirping softly, a warmth filled him that no heater could replicate. Ending, the sky breaks. The storm ended on the 33rd day. The clouds parted, revealing stars glittering above Elithra's frozen plains. For the first time, the world was silent. Kieran lay on the snow outside the ruin, vision dimming, breath shallow. He had done his part. The hatchlings were alive. That was enough. But fate was not done with him. Shadows passed overhead, vast wings blotting the stars. Dragons, dozens of them. They descended into the valley, called by the reawakening of the ancient chamber. Their cries shook the air. The albino hatchling, no longer alone, stood before them, her sibling pressed against her. She spread her tiny wings and chirped defiantly. The elders landed, their glowing eyes falling upon the humans slumped in the snow. Their kind did not usually spare outsiders. But as they studied the hatchling and the way she pressed protectively against a man, realization rippled through them. This human had not destroyed, had not hunted, had not abandoned. He had given life where none remained. One of the elders lowered its massive head, enveloping Kieran in heat. Claws lifted him gently, carrying him toward the warmth of their caravan. The hatchling chirped once, as if in triumph. For weeks, she had dragged the crystal through the endless storm. She had refused to let her sister die. And now, because of that stubborn will, not only was her sibling alive, but the human who saved them would live as well. Above, the stars of Elithra, 7 glittered against the void, and the long storm was finally over.